Welcome to the Ambitious Introvert Podcast, created especially for introverts, empaths, and highly sensitive entrepreneurs to help you build, grow, and scale a successful, sustainable business. I'm your host, Emma-Louise Parks, business and mindset coach for ambitious introverts. After 17 years working as an air traffic controller, the ultimate fast-paced, high-stimulus, extrovert-friendly role, my mission now is to show introverts that they too can create big results and success because of who they are, not in spite of it. I focus on introvert-friendly business and marketing strategy to help you switch overwhelm for clarity, confidence, and clients. Hello. Welcome to this week's episode of the Ambitious Introvert Podcast. I'm Emma-Louise, and way back now, I think probably about 18 months ago, I wrote a blog post about how I schedule my week as an introvert entrepreneur. And people still message me occasionally to say, do you still have that blog post? Because making sure that we schedule our tasks in a way that manages our energy and makes us as efficient as possible is the key when we have things that we do over and over and over again in our businesses. So I'm really thrilled to welcome today's guest because we are going to be talking about how to take back your time so that you can manage your energy and grow your business as an introvert. Reese, thank you so much for joining us. Please introduce yourself and tell my audience a little bit about your business.
Well, Emma-Louise, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I love talking all things introverty, and optimization is my obsession, whether we're talking about websites or order confirmation emails, or even how you manage your work-life balance. I help my clients with all those things. And what I really love to do is find these hidden points of friction in those places, whether it's places in your business or in how you're managing your schedule that maybe turn off a prospective customer or they make your life harder. And so finding those and refining and optimizing and tweaking them is really my jam. And I am also an introvert myself, specifically an INTJ or an INTP, depending on the day and the test. And I am an HSP as well. And I have some health issues that impact my energy. So I think it's really helpful, especially for your audience, to hear the context that I'm working from as a person and what I'm managing in my own business and life.
And, you applied to be on the show and obviously had a great topic, which is very relevant, and which is why you're here. But we were just chatting before we hit record. And, this is a topic that I talk about a lot from the energetic point of view, because so much of the popular advice that we see about scheduling, I think works probably really well for extroverts and maybe very well for people that are not easily drained energetically and all of that good stuff. But for us, it's so important that we approach things in a different way.
I love that you brought that up, because one of the things I was thinking about before I came on your podcast was most of our world is fairly dominated by the way extroverts run and operate, and scheduling and calendar management and time management is no different. And you think about extroverts really maybe not being affected by things like having meetings all the time, or their employer or boss wanting them to have meetings, or maybe even if they run a business, their support staff, people who tend to talk more than they listen. And I think a lot of these time management and scheduling books or advice, blogs that we might read are dominated by extroverted methods. And I don't think they work nearly as well for us. And I also think part of the problem with a lot of the time management systems out there is they may work for the person who wrote or constructed this system. So the idea of, you'll wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and tackle your most important creative task of the day. Well, that might work great for whoever decided that works great for him, but we aren't all built that way. And so I decided to start approaching scheduling and time management, calendar management from the point of view of how do we make it for the person it affects the most versus what I tell you to do, or what Emma-Louise tells you to do, or what a book tells you to do. Find something that you design to work with you.
Where I've seen this be very, very true is I use human design a lot with my clients, and many of my clients are projectors. I am a bit of a projector magnet. So they have a very specific way of working where they work in sprints, very short sprints of maybe a couple of hours, but they can literally do a full day's work. So society has made them feel a lot of shame into, well, you should be working at 8 hours a day. And actually, they can happily sit around all day and watch Netflix, and then the inspiration hits. And it's like watching someone on a time lapse. And, they just like crank all this stuff out in 2 hours and then go, oh, like I've done everything I need to do for the week. Like it's insane. But yeah, if they were scheduling, as you say, in a very more masculine, patriarchal, extroverted way of, getting the calendar and blocking out time at 5 o'clock in the morning to do this, that's just going to burn them out.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the other things I was thinking is it's not just the idea of, oh, we'll wake up at 5 a.m. or we'll schedule 8 meetings a week. But even these smaller things, the word you said, shame, is what really made me remember this. We'll go on Instagram or wherever, and some influencer will be talking about, oh, you can get great content for your feed by just taking photos wherever you go and in the moment, and just take a video of yourself doing something in the moment. Like this is just a small example. And a lot of us who are introverted and or sensitive hear that and we think, why can't I do that? But the ramp up and the energy involved for us just to be able to say, take a photo of ourselves. I think you can relate to this, or hop on video. It's not just this like quick thing that we can slip into our days. And yet we're in a culture where we're told that there's something wrong with us if we can't automatically make that work and happen for us.
This one always makes me laugh because I don't take my phone out. Like 90% of the time when I leave the house, I don't take my phone with me. So great. I could be at the beach or, drinking a nice coffee. And I could just snap it and share it, but I don't actually have a device.
Yeah. And I think part of it, I don't want to unnecessarily slam extroverts here. I have many friends who are extroverts, but I do think of the introverts I know, most of them are not the type who really want to be on camera. And this is not a mindset issue or self-esteem issue. It's just we as introverts tend to naturally, I think, be a bit more comfortable behind the scenes. It doesn't mean we're shy, but we aren't gravitating towards being a celebrity in our own right. This may not be true for everyone, but it certainly is for me and for a lot of the introverts I talk with. And so to add insult to injury here, we are surrounded by an online business culture where people are always pushing this visibility, right? Like, be visible, show your face, get on video. And that's really easier said than done for some people.
The external validation piece just isn't there for a lot of introverts, not for everyone, but for a lot of people, that it doesn't, first off, it doesn't come naturally to document everything and share it because we're not there sitting waiting for some likes and, responses and comments. And we don't often need that external validation. Everything's done internally. Like we think, oh, I know that that's a good post, or I know that that's a good photograph. We're not waiting for someone to tell us. So I think a lot of it comes down to that from what I have seen. You don't feel this big desire to have that big dopamine hit of loads of likes. So therefore it just doesn't, I don't know, it's just not at the forefront of our minds to post. I had to become very consistent in marketing. It didn't come naturally to me at all. And it was the downfall of my business for a long time. I've talked about this many times. I had to create consistency, which I'm now very grateful for and is fine. But that kind of like, oh, just in the moment, take a video, that doesn't work for me.
No, me neither. And I think hopefully we'll be able to dig into maybe some of what you've talked about with consistency and the way I do that in my own schedule when it comes to things like videos and meetings, so that we can have some boundaries around it and contain our energy.
So I'm really glad you said that, because I know that your approach is very bespoke to each individual, but I would love to know how you do schedule your week specifically as an introvert.
Yes. What I do is I assign a theme to each day of the week. So for example, right now, and I'm working on tweaking this a little bit. I'm always tweaking. But Tuesdays are what I call my people-y day. Meetings, Facebook Lives when I used to do them, group calls for the group program that I was running, podcasts whenever possible. I can't always because I'm kind of beholden to the person scheduling it. But I try to, for the most part, anything relating to dealing with other people in some sort of meeting or having to be on video myself or be in photos, it's all contained on Tuesdays. And not only does it improve efficiency, I only am dealing with hair and makeup on one day, for example, for the most part, but it also helps me not have this constant up and down of energy with people interaction throughout the week. And then the rest of my week has themes to it. You mentioned human design and your clients, and I've been refining my own week a little bit from that. Mondays, I used to spend doing client work, like some of the one-on-one client work that I do for people, copywriting and design. But I've changed it so that Mondays for me, because I am a generator, I like to use that time to do brainstorming, strategy, creative thinking, bigger business planning. It helps fuel me for the rest of the week. Tuesdays, like I said, are my people day, but I'm going to be moving those to Wednesdays just to give me a little bit more time at the beginning of the week to sink into the week. And then Thursdays are a very heavy client work day for me. So I sit down and I really will drill down into a larger copywriting or website assessment that I'm doing. And then Fridays, I leave open for things like doctor's appointments, dentist, more of my life things that I have to do. I try to schedule all those life appointments on Fridays. It's also my administrative day, catching up on admin things, maybe emails that slipped through earlier in the week, things that my team has asked of me that I need to respond to. So by having a theme for each day, I don't get it right all the time, right? No week is going to be perfect, but it really helps keep it compartmentalized in my brain. And my energy in turn is calmer because I know there's going to be a beginning and an end to my Tuesdays. I know if I contain my people stuff to that day, for example, as much as possible, that once I'm done with it, the rest of the week is kind of mine to renew and rest and restore and do other kinds of work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I use a very similar way of, certain activities being done on certain days. So I wouldn't mix, say, a day where I was batch writing content with having a client call. And I also wouldn't mix client calls with podcast recordings, because to me, there's a very different energy. If I'm showing up as a podcast host, it's very different to showing up as someone's coach. So I definitely do that. And it's interesting because I've mentioned this before, and I think I mentioned it in that blog post. When I was a controller, we would have people come in and study us like we're some kind of weirdos all the time. They would come and sit and they would watch us do our job, which it probably does look very strange. It would be us sat there with about 7 or 8 different screens and a headphone on and a microphone, looking around and saying random things to different aircraft. But what they were always very interested in, especially from a human factors point of view, is, were we multitasking? And what came back from all of the different studies and the science is that we actually weren't multitasking. So we always believed we could listen to the aircraft responding to us and listen to someone on the phone at the same time. But you don't. Your attention flicks. So it actually flickers between the two, and it's constantly going back and forth. And the more often that happens, the more often during a day that your attention flicks between different things, it takes longer and longer to get your attention back on the other thing. So that's always stayed with me. And I'm like, well, if I'm writing, I want to be in the flow of writing. I don't want to have to stop writing and then get on a call with someone and then go back and be like, oh, I need to start writing again now. And it's going to take me 45 minutes to get back into that mode. Does that make sense?
Yes, it absolutely makes sense. I feel like you and I probably have very similar brains. And I use the term on-ramp and off-ramp. There is an on-ramp for me when it comes to more deeper creative work, like writing, for example, regardless of whether it's for a client or my own email newsletters, whatever it might be. It takes me that good 45 minutes just to get to the point where I feel like I'm in flow. So if I only schedule an hour for writing, and then in your example, move on to a client meeting or, going to run out and run an errand, I have just killed my efficiency and interrupted my flow. And I think that's one of the problems with what a lot of people use, this task-based scheduling system, where they're the beginning of each week, they look at, okay, what's my task list? And they just kind of are responsive to the task list rather than thinking through, how could I not only like block these into similarly related blocks, but how could I even take and theme days with related tasks? You move away from this mode of feeling like you're constantly putting out fires or just being beholden to your task list. That's exhausting. It's inefficient. It creates friction. And if we are also HSP, it introduces even more unnecessary fatigue and overstimulation on our nervous system. So it just it's this terrible snowball. Whereas if you group the things that make sense together and you leave yourself enough time, and I even like to say, leave yourself in your schedule shit happens space where you don't have anything blocked out for this overflow, you're going to be in a lot more flow. Your nervous system's going to feel calmer. It might, you and I had a conversation before we started recording about transitions. And it might be that if you start to transition to the type of calendar and time management that you and I are talking about, it might feel icky at first because you're coming off the inertia of the way you had been previously scheduling things. Maybe that putting out fires responsiveness or that task list based way of doing it. Our bodies and physiology, just because we want to change something, that they don't necessarily change on a dime, right? There's going to be a transitional time. So if it feels sticky at first, give yourself a break. Don't aim for perfection here. Give yourself a few weeks at least to ease into a different way of managing your life and your schedule.
I have the opposite with a lot of clients who, when they are earlier on in their business or their personal development journey, and we are, starting a mindset practice routine or a self-care routine, is that it feels very awkward to them to get up and do that in the morning because they want to get up and go to work. And it's like, well, of course you do, because that's how you've been programmed through your corporate life, is that you get up and go to work for most people, and then you get your work done, and then you come home and you can relax and do things. So there's this feeling of resistance and guilt around, waking up in the morning and journaling or exercising or meditating or whatever the thing is. But I always say to them, you can guarantee if you watch any, big coach, multi-6, 7-figure coach or whatever, they are doing that in the morning. There is a reason it works, but it's not going to happen on day one. You're not going to wake up and go, oh, this feels great taking an hour to myself. So yeah, absolutely. We have to recalibrate, and it's getting used to it. And for our nervous system to go, oh, this is the new normal, and it's safe and it's okay. And I still get all the work done.
And I think you have to give yourself a lot of grace around this. And almost, if you can kind of neutralize it and step away from judgment and think about it, you haven't been exercising for quite a while. And then tomorrow you start, doing a kettlebell routine or lifting weights. You are not going to get that exercise endorphin rush for probably at least the first few weeks of a new exercise program, especially if you've been a couch potato. And actually, I think that's part of why it's a struggle for people to move from couch potato to exercise, because they hear these stories about, oh, you'll feel great, the runner's high will kick in. It's like, this isn't happening for me. There's a transition time. Like you said, you use the word recalibrate. We cannot just muscle our brains and our bodies into change overnight. And that's why I really like to say, give yourself grace and space whenever you are making a change into how you're managing your work or your life and your work-life balance.
I'm glad you mentioned kettlebells. I've got kettlebells, and I love kettlebells, but I used to do the Tim Ferriss 4-hour body kettlebell workout, which is 75 consecutive kettlebell swings, I think twice a week. And yeah, you build up to it, of course. And then I got to it, and I got to that stage, and it was great. And I felt great. And I did it twice a week, and I loved it. And then I bought a heavier kettlebell and all of this. And then, of course, I stopped doing it. And then about a year later, I thought, oh, I'll just start again. And I could do like 20, and it felt awful.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I'm nodding along thinking for me, I tried doing the same program, and then I ended up really borking my knee because of that repeat kind of stress on it. And if you aren't doing, this is a really good conversation. If you aren't in alignment in the right way for your body when you're doing these kettlebell swings, and then you keep doing something on repeat, you can really cause an injury. And I think that there's a metaphor here somewhere for life in general.
If you aren't aligned with your schedule, if your knees aren't aligned with your kettlebells, all of these things, yeah, absolutely. And we keep doing things over and over again, and it doesn't feel good. Whereas for me, I was obviously in alignment, so it felt great. It was just a bit of a shell shock a year, 18 months later when I decided to pick it up again, and I went, I can't do 75 straight off the bat twice a week.
No, you had to work your way back up to it, didn't you?
You do. I did. And it is so important, as you say, to give grace in that. So whatever it is, whether you are trying a new scheduling system, whether it is exercise, whether it's self-care, whether it's a new mindset practice, whatever it is that's pushing the edges because you want to grow and you want to change and you want to improve, it's never just going to happen overnight. It's never just going to feel perfect on day one.
No, I can attest to that too.
and it doesn't stop. For anyone that's early days going, oh, once I'm over that bit, like it will be easy. If you want to keep growing and, you keep evolving and you keep, pushing the edges, then, it's still there. I think you just get maybe a little bit more used to it, or you expect it. You're like, okay, I'm in for a bit of a journey here.
Yes, I think that would be one of the greatest things that a person could learn on their self-improvement or business improvement and growth journey is to get to the point where you begin to expect there to be some growing pains. Oh, it's not going to be perfect out of the gate. And you need transition times for any kind of change that you are making in your business or your life.
Yeah, 100%. One of my clients, whenever I gently suggest something to her, like raising her prices or bringing out a elevated offer or these things, it's like, no, this doesn't feel good. I don't like it. And then a day or two later, it's like, okay, so it's feeling a bit better now. And it's like, well, of course, it's not going to feel amazing on the call, because if you were already there, you'd already be doing it. And I wouldn't be a good coach if I wasn't trying to push you to, go a little bit further than where you are now, because that's how you're going to grow, right? And then, within a few weeks, it's just like, oh, yeah, that's normal now. But there's always that initial just little bit of resistance.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it reminds me of something that I think could possibly come up for the people listening as they're hearing this about a schedule and they hear how you and I manage it. And we have, like, for example, I have really fairly strong boundaries about when I have meetings, for example. And one of the things that comes up when I work with clients has to do around exerting boundaries with their own clients or people in their life when they're trying to transition to a new schedule. And you were talking about the discomfort. You encourage one of your clients to raise her prices, and her immediate reaction is, yikes, no, and then she needs to sit with it. And I've noticed that people really get skittish around this if it means that they've got to politely lay down the law with others. Like, I'm doing my meetings now on Tuesdays, for example, with an existing client. And just enacting that boundary will send their anxiety and nervous system into overdrive, and they'll resist it. And I've noticed it really feels awkward the first few times you do this if you are not used to stating your boundaries with others, but it does get easier with practice. And I didn't believe that. I hated it when people told me that, but it is true. After several years of doing this myself, it's not a big deal for me to just say, no, I can't on Thursday or Friday, but hey, I've got room on Tuesday, right? Like you get more diplomatic about it, becomes easier. But if you have something internally kicking up inside of you, when we're talking about having a schedule with compartments and how you will manage that with the people in your life, start with the easiest people first. So what I love to do is when you have to enact new boundaries around your schedule, start first with enacting it with the people that you expect the least amount of friction or pushback from. It will help you exercise that muscle and get more positive feedback. Don't start with the person that you know is going to give you hell about this. Work your way there.
Yeah, 100%. Baby steps with anything, because by the time you've said it 4, 5, 6 times to other people, you're like, okay, I can do this.
Mm-hmm. But it's that first one that you've got to be willing to be brave about.
I say this to clients with everything. Like the first time is going to be the worst. Maybe it's the first time you have to follow up for a late invoice. Maybe it's the first time you post on social media. Maybe it's the first time you do a live video. Maybe it's your first podcast interview, like whatever it is. The first time is always going to feel the worst because your ego is just going wild of, well, we don't know what's on the other side of this. We don't know what's going to happen. Whereas as soon as you've got that evidence that, okay, we'll live, it's fine, it just gets easier and easier. And by time 30 or whatever it is that of doing the thing, it's just like, oh, okay, just another part of my day.
Exactly.
I love it. So, Reese, thank you for sharing all of your scheduling wisdom. I am thrilled at how aligned we are. Obviously, I'm going to drop all of your links in the show notes. So if anyone wants to connect with you and come and learn more, they can find it there. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you for your book recommendation for my audience of introverts looking to start, grow, or scale their business.
Okay. This just gels so beautifully with your last statement around uncertainty, about how our egos kick up defenses and protests when we need to do something new because of the uncertainty about what's on the other side, right? So this book is actually about that. So it is called The Biggest Bluff. The author's name is Maria Konnikova. I may be pronouncing that wrong. So listen to this. The author decided she wanted to compete in the World Series of Poker within a year of being a complete novice and never being a poker player. And this is not a book about gambling. I am recommending it because it's a mindset book. And I think that starting and running a business successfully requires mental discipline and knowing yourself very well. We've talked a bit about that, knowing who you are and then shaping your schedule and how you work accordingly. But it's also related to uncertainty. And I will read you a quick quote from the book. Poker is all about comfort with uncertainty, after all. Only I didn't quite realize it wasn't just uncertainty about the outcome of the cards. It's uncertainty about the right thing to do. The only certain thing is your thinking. There is a lot of uncertainty that we have to navigate in business. And this book really made me reflect on how can I build my muscle of dealing with uncertainty and being more at peace with not knowing. So that is why I am recommending it as the book for your audience.
We definitely have not had that book recommended. So thank you. And as someone who spent 17 years with literally the word controller in their job title, then yes, uncertainty is definitely something that has been a challenge to me in my business. And I know to many of my clients. So I think that will be perfect read. Thank you, Reese, so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love this conversation, and I hope everyone listening really enjoyed getting a peek into how we manage our schedules as introverts.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ambitious Introvert Podcast with me, Emma-Louise Parks. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on iTunes. As a thank you, one lucky reviewer each month will win a 60-minute one-on-one coaching session with me, where you'll get the clarity and confidence to attract your ideal clients. And if you know someone who could benefit from listening to the show, then please do share and help me reach as many fellow ambitious introverts as possible.